Order. I will call Sarah Dyke to move the motion and then I will call the Minister to respond. There will not be an opportunity for the member in charge to wind up, as is the convention for 30-minute debates. Order, order. Sarah Dyke to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered UK food security. Mrs Cummins, it's an honour to serve with you in the chair and open this important debate. The most widely accepted definition of food security is when all people, at all times, have physical, social and economic access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. This definition is built on 4 pillars: supply, access, supply stability and nutritional value. So food resilience is a critical aspect of ensuring food security and sustainability in the UK, and it needs to be incorporated into our agri-food systems. Mrs Cummins, the UK may score well on supply, with the government food strategy observing that we produce around 75% of what we consume. But this number hides a range of self-sufficiency levels and some of the future problems that we will encounter. For example, the UK only produces 53% of vegetables and 16% of fruits we consume. This makes our fruit and veg supply vulnerable to outside factors, as seen when a shortage of tomatoes hit the UK last February. So when you also consider that we import most of our fruit and veg from southern Europe, a region that will be heavily impacted by climate change, it is essential that we focus on putting in place the necessary measures now. Food security is paramount to our national security, and it is crucial that we take a holistic view to our food supply chain. Yes, of course.
Can I first of all commend the Honourable Lady for Somerton and Froome for bringing this forward? And it's very coincidental that Ulster University back home in Northern Ireland has just revealed that 1 in 10 UK adults lived in households classified as marginally food insecure. 10% reported living in households with moderate or severe food insecurity. The Honourable Lady is right to bring this matter to Westminster Hall. So does the Honourable Lady agree more can be done within our schools to extend free school universally, to take the ease off parents and more so ensure that all children have access to one healthy and nutritious meal each day? Sarah Dyke.
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention, and of course he's quite right, and I will come on to that later in my speech. Mrs Cummins, we must ensure that there is sustainability in our food production that encompasses the nutritional quality, food accessibility and stability of supply. When we talk about the sustainability of food production, we must first look inwards at food being produced at home. Now, British farming is facing a crisis. I hear daily from members of my own family, neighbours and friends about the challenges they are facing, their concerns and anxieties regarding their business. For this reason, I feel honoured to work alongside organisations such as the Farm Safety Foundation, who are campaigning to raise awareness of the mental health crisis facing farmers and farm workers. The immense pressure the industry has faced over recent years is taking its toll, financially, physically and mentally. Many farms across the country are on the precipice, with 110,000 farms having closed their farm gates since 1990, and many farmers don't know if they will survive the next 12 months. Yes, of course.
The Environmental Audit Committee has said the food system globally and in the UK has become too driven by price alone. That race to the bottom for cheapest food results in a squeeze on farmers' incomes and results in that pressure, mental pressure that you're talking about, and undermines food security. Does she agree the government must do more to ensure that the UK trade policies support fair terms of trade for farmers, both here and abroad, rather than driving the import and export of cheap food?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention, and it's my very next point, and it's a very, very good one that she makes. Unfair supermarket buying practices are indeed leaving family farms teetering on a cliff edge. The current grocery supply code of practice is inadequate and rarely enforced. Nearly 70% of British fruit and veg farmers agree that we need tougher regulations to redress the imbalance of power. So although our food system is structurally resilient, it's functionally non-resilient and is not sustainable in the long term. British farmers are receiving incoherent messages from the government. On one hand, they are told to engage more on sustainable practices, which is welcome, but then on the other hand, this Conservative government signs irresponsible trade deals with Australia and New Zealand that undercut them on welfare practices and food standards. Good food security needs a trade policy that protects British agriculture. We also need proper scrutiny of our trade deals. Now, the former Environment Secretary, George Eustace, didn't even have a positive opinion of them, stating that the UK's free trade deal with Australia was not actually a very good deal for the UK. We need to support the production of sustainable food at home and allow parity in the market. We should allow the system to put more emphasis on localism that can deliver a food system that is resilient and delivers a vibrant, cyclical local economy. Now, I represent a constituency in rural Somerset. People here live next to local food suppliers, but that food is not always available to buy locally, despite the wishes of those that are producing the food. So polling from the Sustain Alliance has stated that 75% of farmers indicated that gaining access to alternative local markets gave them opportunities to demand a more competitive price for their produce, whilst keeping revenue local to create local jobs and incentivise further investment on their farm. But the current market limits these opportunities, whether it be difficulties with planning applications that could stop the constructions of farm shops, for example, or the restrictions with buyer contracts that prevent farmers from shortening the supply chain. Yes, of course.
Thank you for giving way, and congratulations on securing the debate today. And I agree entirely with her that if we are to protect the consumer, then we have an interest also in supporting and protecting the long-term sustainability of our food producers. On the point of planning, one of the biggest challenges that we face is, whilst we welcome the ability for farmers to diversify with farm shops or perhaps support some renewable energy production on their land to some extent, there's a lot of pressure from developers to develop prime agricultural land for housing. And I wondered if you would agree with me that more could be done at a national level and indeed a local level to support prime agricultural land for the production of food rather than for housing development.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and I quite agree that there needs to be a balance around food production and housing supply. And my own view is that we need to ensure that housing is developed. Yes, of course.
I thank the honourable lady for giving way. She's making an excellent speech. Further point that's just been made by the honourable member, many farmers in my constituency feel that while rewilding is a fashionable concept, that perhaps it goes a little too far, and we need to be more imaginative about deciding between what can be rewilded and what should be kept and maintained in the same way as not being used for housing, for growing excellent British food.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and I agree that we need to balance food production and ensuring that we protect our precious environment. And farmers obviously have a key role to play on that.
Before she leaves this,
and I will give way.
I'm grateful because she's being exceptionally generous, but I think this does come to the heart of the matter here. One of the biggest barriers for red meat producers in particular for putting their produce into a local supply chain like that is the inability to get it slaughtered close to the point of production. Does she agree with me that ending this ever-increasing move towards larger centralised abattoirs would allow a regrowth of smaller abattoirs closer to the point of production, better from the animal welfare point of view, better from carbon emissions, and better ultimately for the producers being able to access that much more diverse range of markets?
I thank the honourable member for his comments, and I, as an owner of a small flock of sheep,
Fine Shetland sheep.
Fine Shetland sheep, indeed, I do understand the challenges of being able to access a local abattoir, but not only a local abattoir, but one that will be able to help with the services that small producers require as well. So I will cover that in a minute, but if I can make some progress. So I want to see changes in the public procurement system that provides schools such as King Arthur School in Wincanton or Ansford Academy in Castle Carey, Frome College or Hewish Episcopi Academy with the flexibility to source local food, whether that should be able to be sourced locally, the food and drink, and to ensure that it has that local provenance. And I think that many schools don't have that flexibility to be able to source locally. Now, this particularly resonates in regard to the 800,000 children living in poverty who are not eligible for free school meals, as their household is in receipt of universal credit and has in excess of £7,400 post-tax income. So building awareness in children of where their food comes from now can sow the seeds of good food habits for life. The Liberal Democrats believe that it is crucial we extend free school meals to all children in primary education and all secondary school children whose family receive universal credit. But there is a threat to this. There has been a 12% increase in the number of large-scale industrial farms in the UK from 2016 to 2023. The intensive nature of these farms means that accessibility to local food and drink will likely be diminished. Environmental standards will decline, and the custodians of our countryside, the small family farm, will disappear. Yes, of course.
Sorry to interrupt, and I'm very grateful to her for giving way in what is an excellent speech, and I thank her for it. Does she also agree with me that one of the threats to the family farm is the fact that we have a range of new schemes being put out by the government, many of which are commendable in themselves, under the ELMS heading, so to speak, but tenant farmers are not protected. And Baroness Rock's review, which includes 70 recommendations, including there being a tenant commissioner, are excellent recommendations, and they surely should be put in place to protect tenant farmers before many of them are kicked off their land by landlords exploiting new schemes. Isn't that just morally wrong, but is it also extremely stupid because it reduces our ability to feed ourselves as a country?
Yeah.
Sarah Dyke.
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention and one that I wholeheartedly support. Moving back to my speech, it is critical for long-term UK food security that we employ sustainable agricultural practices that focuses on appropriate food production, that helps to protect the environment, conserve natural resources and reduces greenhouse gas emissions, whilst ensuring an adequate and reliable food supply to meet the demands of the population. So, Mrs Cummins, the government's food strategy was described as a waste of trees by Professor Tim Lang. So this government should now not balk at producing a robust land use strategy, which has been promised for over a year, but is yet to be seen. And perhaps the Minister could set out an update on this for us later this morning. The Liberal Democrats will develop a comprehensive national land strategy, including a horticulture strategy to encourage the growth of the horticulture sector and effectively manage the competing demands on land. Now, Mrs Cummins, at this point, I would like to thank the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee for their recent report on insect decline and food security, which raised a very important issue. The loss of biodiversity and pollinators will heavily impact on our ability to grow food moving forward. Around 40% of all insects are at risk of extinction, and these insects are an integral part of our ecosystem. Without them, we simply wouldn't survive. For example, dung beetles fertilise and aerate soils, which help to maintain pasture that livestock is fed upon. It's estimated that dung beetles may save the UK cattle industry a whopping £367 million a year through the provision of ecosystem services. And one of the many things Somerset is famous for is our cider. And pollinators are crucial to apple production. However, we have already witnessed their decline. BugLife's Southwest Bees report in 2013 focused on 23 bee species considered most at risk in the southwest. 12 of the target species occur in Somerset, but sadly 6 target species have already been lost. The National Pollinator Strategy is due for renewal this year, and the government must take this opportunity to redress our biodiversity losses. However, I lack the confidence that they will do this, as this year is the 4th in a row where the government has authorised the emergency use of neonic pesticides, despite knowing the harmful effects this has on our wildlife. The Liberal Democrats oppose the use of these damaging pesticides and recognise how important it is to protect our wild pollinators to stop further damage to our biodiversity and protect UK food security in the long term. Now, this brings me on to UK household food security. A resilient food system can help stabilise food prices and minimise market volatility. According to the Food Foundation, the poorest 20% of households would need to spend half their disposable income on food to afford the NHS-recommended healthy diet that is clearly impossible for those people. Food-related ill health is a growing issue in our society. So unless we take action to improve our food system, it's estimated that 40% of British adults will have obesity issues by 2035. That will not just mean increased cost to our NHS, but also to our economy as a whole, given we already have 3 million people out of work due to long-term sickness. We must therefore stem the tide of junk food and unhealthy food, processed food, which is currently flooding our supermarkets, our screens and our high streets. And instead, we must actively work to promote local grown whole foods, such as fruits and vegetables. That is best for our health, for our economy, for our planet, but also for our farmers who want to sell their produce to local people. It is how we can create a thriving food culture that we can all be proud of. The issue of household food security can be particularly prevalent in rural areas, such as my own constituency. Rural communities are less likely to have a glut of choice when it comes to supermarkets like urban areas, and therefore more reliant on smaller local supermarket stores. Research by Which found that these stores almost never stock essential budget line items, which may result in higher food costs and household food insecurity. So, Mrs. Cummins, the major unfairness here is that these communities are often side by side with those that are growing food. And as I have pointed out, these farmers want to sell this food to local residents, but the food system prevents this. We must act now to make this future a reality, as we will soon face a time where climate change disrupts our system with increasing regularity. And if we are not prepared and ready to adapt, our farmers will suffer and we will all suffer as consumers. Mrs. Cummins, by taking a holistic view to UK food security, we can ensure we have a sustainable future that supports British farmers, that supports our environment and biodiversity, and that supports the growth of a healthy nation. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered UK food security. Minister.
Thank you, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mrs. Cummings. And can I thank the honourable member for Somerton and Frome for securing today's incredibly important debate, and also to hear the interventions that have been given by honourable and right honourable members. Food security, UK food security, is vital to our national security, and strengthening it by supporting our farmers and food producers is fundamentally a top priority for this government. The high degree of food security is built on the supply of diverse sources from domestic production, as well as imports through stable trade routes. We produce 60% or 63% of all food here, and 73% of the food that we grow or rear in the UK from all or part of the year round. These figures have changed little over the last 20 years. UK consumers have access through international trade to food products that we cannot produce here, or at least not on an all-year-round basis. And this supplements domestic production and also ensures that any disruption from risks such as adverse weather or disease does not affect the UK's overall food security supply. DEFRA has well-established ways of working with the industry and across government to monitor risks that may arise. The key forum is the F4, chaired by a DEFRA minister, which comprises of the National Farmers Union, the Food and Drink Federation, the British Retail Consortium and UK Hospitality. And this covers interests of the sector from farm to fork. This extensive, regular and ongoing engagement helps us as a department to quickly prepare for and respond to issues with the potential to have the potential to cause disruption to food supply chains. We also continue monitoring of the market through the UK Agriculture Marketing Monitoring Group, which monitors the UK agricultural markets, including price, supply, inputs, trade and recent developments. And we've also broadened our engagement with the industry to supplement our analysis with real-time intelligence as required. Domestically, the government has committed to maintaining, if not enhancing, our current level of food we produce. This includes sustainably boosting production in sectors where there are post-Brexit opportunities. Food production and environmental improvement must and can go hand in hand, as we all know, and we are already seeing the benefits from our environmental schemes, which are supporting food production domestically, but also the instances of improving our environmental benefits. For instance, actions through the Sustainable Farming Incentive support the creation of flower-rich buffers, which help pollinators, which in help turn produce a better yields. Our soil management actions ensure farmers are supported in the foundations of food security, such as health and resilience of soil. And the Agriculture Act 2020 imposes a duty on the Secretary of State to have regard to the need to encourage the production of food by producers in England and its production by them in an environmentally sustainable way when framing any financial assistance scheme. And we are seeing this through the rollout of the environmental land management schemes. I will give way.
On the point about the environment, farmers in my constituency have made the point to me that when an audit, a carbon capture audit is done of the farm, the carbon sequestration, that the value of grassland in terms of getting hold of carbon and storing it is underestimated, and that should be looked at again in terms of the overall audit of these farms, and that in turn, I believe, could help support the growth of excellent beef on our farms.
Minister.
And I thank the Honourable Member for Caithness for his intervention. And having had my whole life involved in the agricultural sector before entering this place, I know just how important pasture and grassland is to carbon sequestration. And it's important that when we are rolling out environmental land management schemes, that the benefit that pasture land has to carbon sequestration is noted and taken into account when we are rolling out these schemes. And that is why the reforms that we have introduced on through coming out of the Common Agricultural Policy are so important to support highly productive food-producing sector and one that is environmentally sustainable. In addition to the Sustainable Farming Incentive, the Farming Investment Fund and Farm Productivity Innovation Funds will further help to improve farm productivity. Our schemes will ensure our long-term food security by investing in foundations of food production, such as healthy soil, water and biodiverse ecosystems. Backing our farmers is so important, and that is why at the National Farming Conference, the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State announced a range of measures to boost productivity and resilience in the sector, including the largest ever grant offer for farmers in the coming financial year, expected to total £227 million.
He talks about the rolling out of grant offer, which can be very valuable to many farmers. Is he aware that as things stand, tenants do not have the opportunity to make those grant applications themselves? Will he agree with his noble friend Baroness Rock that there should be the opportunity for there to be joint applications from tenant and landlord for capital grants so that our farmers can thrive and our tenants can remain on the land?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and of course Baroness Rock from the other place produced a fantastic report in the Rock Review with many excellent recommendations. I and my fellow colleagues in the ministerial team at DEFRA are in close interaction with Baroness Rock, working our way through the many recommendations that have been put in place. And of course it is absolutely vital that if we are rolling out schemes, that any innovation or productivity grants, indeed any sustainable farming incentive schemes, or others that fall under the land management, environmental land management schemes, are available to all applicants to make sure that we can get the best out of the land that they farm. And continuing on the recommendations that were made at the National Farmers Union, building on the 427 million, this doubles the investment going into productivity schemes, growing the grant offer from 91 million last year to 220 million this year. We have already awarded 120 million in grant funding to farmers through the Farming Investment Fund and committed 120 million to 185 projects as part of our Farming Innovation Programme. The government will also provide 15 million in funding to stop the millions of tonnes of good, fresh farm food going to waste by redirecting that surplus into the hands of those who need it. Together, these funds will support innovation and productivity, improve animal health and the environment. We will continue to work across government to ensure that we carry out the commitments made in the UK Food Strategy and Farm to Fork Summit in terms of the National Planning Policy Framework. We want to ensure that this fully reflects our shared food security and climate and environmental ambitions. And the National Planning Policy Framework sets out clearly that local planning authorities should consider all the benefits of the best and most versatile agricultural land when making plans or taking decisions on new development proposals. And this builds on the intervention that was made by my honourable friend. Where significant development of agricultural land is shown to be necessary, planning authorities should use poorer quality land in preference of a higher quality. Food supply is one of the UK's 13 critical national infrastructure sectors. DEFRA and the Food Standards Agency are joint lead government departments, with DEFRA leading on supply and the FSA on food security. As such, we work closely with the Cabinet Office and other departments to ensure food supply is fully incorporated as part of emergency preparedness, including consideration of dependencies on other sectors. In the Agriculture Act 2020, the government made a commitment to produce an assessment of our food security at least once every 3 years. The first UK food security report was published in December 21, and the next food security report will be published in December 24. To ensure our continued food security, the Prime Minister also announced that a food security index will be published annually, which has been welcomed by the sector and will complement the 3-yearly UK food security report. We are currently developing the content of the index, but we expect that the index will present the key data and analysis needed to monitor how we are maintaining overall food security. Productivity, resilience and environmental sustainability are incredibly important to the domestic food production and is a key element of our food security. We also heard the Prime Minister at the National Farmers Union conference make an announcement of making sure that we are giving internal drainage boards more support. We know how important lowland farmland is for producing food, which is why the £75 million of funding announced by the government during the spring budget and earlier at the National Farmers Union conference is so important to make sure that we can give our internal drainage boards the support that they need to make sure that flooding downstream is mitigated as best as possible. In regards to health and well-being, I just want to pick up on the point that the Honourable Member for Somerton made about the Farm Safety Foundation. I know that James Chapman, as the chair of the trustees, who has been involved in that organisation since 2014, I believe, is doing an excellent job, and I wish him well and his team well with the Farm Safety Foundation, as I know just how important that organisation is, not only for improving farm safety, but also general health and well-being of our farming community. The Honourable Member also made reference to the land use framework. Well, I want to reassure her that the Secretary of State wants to make sure that food productivity is at the heart of the land use framework, which is why we are scrutinising it before it is released, because not only does it have to cover energy security, biodiversity offsetting, net zero, food security, as well as other other measures, we want to make sure that food security is at the heart of that before it is released. Our food security is strong, but we are not taking that for granted, and we will continue to work across the supply chain to maintain and enhance it. I would once again like to thank all members who have contributed or intervened in this debate, but please be assured that the government takes food security incredibly important, and we will continue to keep that as a top priority for the DEFRA ministerial team.
The question is that this House has considered UK food security. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting is suspended until 2:30.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.